Rain lashed the windows of the luxury boutique as he clutched his daughter's tiny hand, their shoes soaked and squeaking on the polished marble floor. James, a single dad in a worn army jacket, stood frozen beneath the blinding chandelier. All eyes were on him, judging, smirking, whispering. His daughter's eyes sparkled as she held up a simple hand-stitched dress to the woman behind the counter. "It's for Mommy, in heaven." The Billionaire store owner, Evelyn Hartley, leaned forward, her red lips curling into disgust. "We don't serve charity cases. Get out." James blinked, silent. His little girl looked up, confused. "I said get out." Evelyn snapped, snapping her fingers at security. "This isn't a shelter." As two guards grabbed his arms, James whispered something that made her freeze. "I fought for this country. And I saved your brother's life in Afghanistan." The color drained from her face, but it was already too late. The soft glow of street lamps flickered through the rain-soaked glass as James and his little girl, Emma, stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the shimmering boutique window. Inside, a pristine white dress hung delicately on a mannequin, catching the light like a fragile dream. Emma's eyes, wide and shimmering with hope, fixed on it. "Daddy, look," she whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Mommy would have loved that dress for her birthday." James bent down, brushing a wet strand of hair from Emma's forehead. His worn army jacket, soaked through, did little to keep the chill away, but he forced a smile. "I know, sweetheart. Maybe one day, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly, clutching her ragged teddy bear close. Her small fingers pressed against the cold glass, tracing the dress's delicate lace, as if trying to bring it closer. James glanced down the empty street, the quiet hum of distant cars the only sound between them. The city's luxury towered all around, glittering like a world they couldn't touch. But tonight, this dress wasn't just fabric, it was a promise. A promise he had made to Emma months ago. She was too young to understand how hard life had been since Mommy passed, or how every day was a battle to keep them safe and warm. But tonight, under the rain, with Emma's hopeful eyes shining bright, James felt the weight of that promise like a chain around his heart. A sharp gust of wind sent cold rain streaking down the windows, blurring the dress, but Emma's gaze never wavered. Before the rain, before the empty nights, James was a man defined by honor, a decorated army medic whose courage saved lives on the battlefield. The memories came rushing back, vivid and raw, as he sat alone on a cracked park bench beneath a flickering street lamp. He could still hear the chaos, the deafening blasts, the desperate cries, the thick smoke choking the air. It was in the dust of a distant desert that James found purpose, rushing into fire to pull fallen comrades to safety. One image never faded, the day he carried a gravely wounded soldier, bleeding and gasping, through enemy lines while bullets tore the air around them. That soldier was Michael Hartley, Evelyn's brother. James remembered the weight of Michael's body against his chest, the crackling static of the radio, and the silent prayers whispered under the desert stars. Against every odds, he saved Michael's life. Back home, medals hung heavy on his chest, but the war never left him. The screams echoed in the quiet moments. The faces of those he couldn't save haunted his dreams. Yet, despite the honors and the respect, life was no easier. The battlefield had given him scars no medal could heal, scars that marked the beginning of a new, harsher fight. James pressed his fist against his forehead, blinking away the ghosts. The war was over, but the battle for his family had only just begun. The transition from battlefield to backyard was harsher than James ever imagined. The sterile walls of his small apartment seemed colder than any desert night. His uniform hung untouched in the closet as days blurred into weeks of uncertainty. Job interviews became exercises in rejection. Each "we appreciate your service," but crushed a little more of his spirit. Employers saw a soldier, but not a father. A veteran, but not a man who needed to provide for a little girl whose laughter was his only light. Bills piled up. The eviction notices started to come. The army taught James discipline, but the civilian world demanded connections and luck, things he no longer had. Nights spent scouring job boards ended with empty hands. Emma watched him quietly, her small face filled with innocent hope, unaware of the late nights when James lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how to keep her safe. The echoes of war morphed into a new enemy: poverty, loneliness, and despair. James sat by the window one rainy evening, his daughter asleep on his lap. He whispered to himself, "I fought for my country. Now I have to fight for her." The uniform may have come off, but the fight was far from over. James held the faded photograph of Lila, her bright smile frozen in time, the sunlight catching the soft curls of her hair. It was the last picture taken before the accident that shattered their world. She had been his anchor, his light in the darkest nights. Together, they dreamed of a future filled with laughter, family dinners, and birthdays marked with joy. But fate was cruel. The phone call came in the dead of night, a frantic voice telling him she'd been in a crash, that she wasn't coming home. The world fell apart as James sat alone in a hospital waiting room, powerless and broken. In the weeks that followed, grief swallowed him whole. Emma was too young to understand why Mommy wouldn't wake up. James did his best to fill the void, but every corner of their home whispered her absence. At night, he'd cradle Emma and tell stories of her mother, of her kindness, her laughter, the way she made everything better. But his heart cracked a little more with every tear his daughter shed. James promised himself that no matter how hard life got, he would be both parents for Emma, but some wounds ran too deep. The bitter winter nights felt endless. James tugged Emma's threadbare coat tighter around her small frame as they huddled beneath a thin blanket on the park bench, their only shelter from the biting cold. The city around them sparkled with warmth and wealth, but for James and Emma, the world was a frozen cage. "Daddy, I'm cold." Emma's voice was a fragile whisper, barely audible over the howling wind. Her small hands trembled as she pressed against his chest. James swallowed the lump in his throat, forcing a reassuring smile. "I know, baby. Just hold on a little longer." His own fingers were numb, but he clenched Emma's hand like a lifeline. Each night was a struggle, finding a safe place to rest, shielding her from the dangers that lurked in the shadows. During the day, James juggled odd jobs, washing dishes, delivering packages, anything that would put food on the table. But the money never seemed enough to escape the cycle. In moments like these, he felt invisible, a man broken by circumstance, trying to hold a shattered family together. But in Emma's eyes, he saw unwavering trust. She believed he could fix everything, and that belief was the fire that kept him moving forward. "We'll find a home soon, sweetheart," he promised quietly. "I swear." James stood in the sterile waiting room of the housing office, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead mirroring the coldness in his chest. A folder of papers clutched tightly in his hands, his heart pounding with a fragile hope. When the clerk's eyes scanned his forms, a thin smile crept across her lips, but it wasn't the kind that offered help. "I'm sorry, sir, but you don't qualify for this program. Single dads without stable employment aren't prioritized." James swallowed hard, blinking past the sting of rejection. He looked down at Emma, who sat quietly on a plastic chair beside him, clutching her teddy bear. Her small face betrayed no hint of understanding, but he felt the weight of disappointment settle deep within him. "Is there any other assistance?" he asked, voice steady but desperate. The clerk shook her head, barely disguising her impatience. "Rules are rules." Outside, the heavy door slammed behind him, echoing like a final verdict. The world that promised safety had slammed its door shut in his face. Again, each no chipped away at James's resolve, but he refused to let the darkness win. For Emma, he would keep knocking. As they stepped back into the biting wind, James whispered to himself, "This isn't over." Not yet. The fluorescent glow of the government office flickered as James sat before a cluttered desk, a stack of forms threatening to bury him alive. His fingers trembled, not from cold, but from the mounting frustration of a system built to ignore men like him. "I don't understand," James murmured to the tired clerk, a weary woman who barely glanced up. "I've served this country. I'm trying to do right by my daughter. Why is it so hard to get help?" The clerk sighed, shuffling papers without meeting his eyes. "It's not personal, sir. There's just so many people." James leaned back, the plastic chair creaking beneath him. He glanced at Emma sitting silently in the corner, tracing circles on her teddy bear's worn fur. Her innocent hope was fading with every bureaucratic barrier. Hours turned into days spent navigating phone calls, waiting lines, and endless paperwork. Each form denied, each promise broken, carved deeper scars in James's spirit. One night, as he sat by the dim light of a single candle, James whispered to Emma, "I'm trying, baby. I'm trying to fix this." But the system was cold, unyielding, and hope was slipping away like water through his fingers. The worn edges of Emma's notebook trembled in James's hands as he knelt beside her on the threadbare couch. Her tiny fingers traced the words she had written, simple, hopeful letters spelling out her wish. "Dress for Mommy's birthday. Emma." James whispered, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I promise you, I will get you that dress, no matter what it takes." Her eyes locked onto his, shining with innocent faith. "Really, Daddy?" He nodded, trying to summon the courage he'd almost lost. "Really, we're going to make it happen, you'll see." That night, the city lights cast long shadows through their window, but James's resolve burned brighter than ever. The promise was more than just about a dress. It was about hope, love, and the fight to keep his daughter's smile alive. He imagined the moment he'd finally hold the delicate fabric in his hands, seeing Emma's face light up as she touched the lace. That vision became a beacon through the darkest nights and hardest days that no matter the obstacles, no matter the cold or hunger, James would keep his promise. Because some things were worth fighting for. The soft glow of a phone screen lit James's tired face as he scrolled through messages and forgotten memories. A notification caught his eye, a photo shared by an old comrade, now circulating online. The image was unmistakable. James, dirt-streaked and bloodied, carrying a wounded soldier through a smoky battlefield. The soldier's face was bruised, eyes closed in pain, but alive because of James. Below the photo, the caption read, "The man who saved my life, Michael Hartley." James's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't thought about Michael in years, let alone the Hartley family. A strange mix of pride and dread washed over him. He had no idea this photo was resurfacing, or that it would soon unravel more than just memories. Emma tugged at his sleeve, breaking his reverie. "Daddy, can we look at pictures of Mommy?" James smiled sadly, locking the phone. "Of course, baby. Let's remember together." But somewhere deep down, he knew this picture would change everything. The boutique was dazzling, polished marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and soft music floated through the air like silk. James took a deep breath, clutching Emma's small hand as they stepped inside. The dress in the window was even more beautiful up close, its lace shimmering under the lights. Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement as she approached the counter, holding up a small hand-stitched card. "It's for Mommy, her birthday." For a brief moment, the room softened. But then, the sharp voice of Evelyn Hartley cut through the calm like a knife. "We don't serve charity cases here," Evelyn said coldly, her eyes narrowing as she stared at James's worn jacket and tired face. James froze, the weight of every rejection crashing down at once. Emma looked up, confused, her small voice trembling. "But I just wanted the dress." Evelyn's lips curled into a sneer. "Get out. People like you don't belong here." Two security guards stepped forward, their hands gripping James's arms. The murmurs of other customers swirled around him like a storm. James whispered, "I fought for this country. I saved your brother's life." Evelyn's face went pale for a fleeting second, but she turned away, her voice sharp. "That doesn't change anything. Leave." Emma's tears spilled over as they were escorted out, the boutique's doors closing behind them like a final slam. As James and Emma stood stunned outside the boutique, the cold rain dripping from their clothes, a sudden voice broke through the haze. "Hey, wait, are you okay?" A young woman called out, pulling out her phone. Her fingers moved quickly, capturing every moment, the sharp words, the guard's harsh grip. Emma's trembling face pressed against her father's chest. James glanced up, surprised but too overwhelmed to respond. The woman's eyes were kind but determined. "This isn't right. People need to see this." She uploaded the video immediately, her caption reading, "Single dad kicked out of luxury store while trying to buy dress for his late wife. Watch what happens when the truth comes out." Within hours, the video spread like wildfire, shared on social media, retweeted, and commented on by thousands. Strangers expressed outrage, some recognizing James, others moved by the raw heartbreak. James sat in a quiet corner of a shelter, phone buzzing incessantly with notifications. Emma slept beside him, unaware that their story had captured the world's attention. But amidst the rising tide of voices, a single comment caught James's eye, a name he hadn't heard in years. Michael Hartley. His heart pounded. Could this be the connection to the woman who had dismissed him? The video's reach exploded overnight. Notifications flooded James's phone, messages of support, outrage, and disbelief. Hashtags like #Justice for James and #SingleDad Fight Back trended worldwide. News outlets picked up the story, spinning it into a viral sensation. People saw beyond the torn jacket and tired eyes. They saw a father fighting for dignity, for his daughter, for a promise. Then, someone connected the dots. The soldier James had saved all those years ago was Michael Hartley, brother to Evelyn. Hartley, the billionaire who had dismissed him so cruelly. The internet buzzed with shock. How could the woman so quick to judge not know the man who had once saved her brother's life? James read through comments, some sympathetic, others harsh, but one thing was clear. This was no longer just his fight. It had become a movement. With sudden spotlight came new challenges. Invitations to interviews and offers of help poured in, but James's resolve stayed steady. He wasn't looking for charity. He wanted respect. In the quiet moments, he whispered to Emma, "This is for you, for Mommy." The gleaming envelope sat heavy on the worn table between James and the glossy-faced representative. The check inside promised money, a quick fix from Evelyn's team to silence the growing scandal. "Just accept it," the man urged smoothly. "It's a generous offer. You won't have to struggle anymore." James looked down at Emma sleeping in her chair, her small chest rising and falling gently. His fingers curled into a fist. Pride burned brighter than any desperation. "No," James said quietly, voice steady but firm. "I'm not here for charity. I want her to know who I am. What I did." The representative's smile faded. "You don't understand. This could end the story, help your family." James shook his head. "I don't want a handout. I want justice." Emma stirred, blinking sleepily. James smiled softly, wiping a tear that had slipped down his cheek. "This isn't about money. It's about respect. For my daughter, for my wife's memory, and for every father who's been ignored." James sat in the back corner of the shelter's dining hall, staring at the untouched bowl of soup in front of him. Around him, the clatter of trays and murmured conversations faded into a low hum, like the world was whispering just out of reach. His shoulders curled inward, hands buried in the pockets of his old army coat. That coat used to stand for something: honor, service, purpose. Now it just kept out the cold. He waited until Lila was asleep in her bunk, her tiny hand still clutching the corner of a worn-out storybook. Then he stepped outside into the night. He leaned against the brick wall, the street lamp flickering overhead, and let the tears come. No one could see him here. He sank to the ground, knees pulled to his chest. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he whispered to no one, to everyone. "I tried, I really tried." He hadn't cried since the day he folded his wife's funeral flag. But now it broke through the shame, the powerlessness, the crushing weight of being a father without enough to give. He wasn't angry at Evelyn anymore. He wasn't even angry at the world. He was angry at himself. Angry that he couldn't shield his daughter from this. Angry that all he had left were apologies and bedtime stories. "I'm just so tired." A gentle wind stirred the trash along the curb. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed indifferent, just another night in the city. But in that moment, James let himself break, and as the tears fell, they carved a silent promise into the dark. This wasn't the end. The next morning, the shelter doors creaked open, and in walked Evelyn Marlowe. Hair pulled back, face bare, no entourage, no luxury coat. Just a woman trembling on the inside, trying to right a wrong too big for headlines. James saw her from across the room, frozen mid-step as he helped Leela with her shoes. Their eyes locked. The room seemed to hush. I didn't know," she sighed, voice catching. "I didn't know who you were." James stood slowly, shielding his daughter instinctively. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to come," she said. "I found out about the convoy in Kandahar, about the ambush, about how you saved," her voice cracked. "You saved my brother's life." James blinked. "Jason?" She nodded. "He never told me your name. Just that a quiet guy from Texas pulled him out of the wreckage." A silence stretched between them, heavy with memory and regret. "I judged you," Evelyn whispered, "and I humiliated you. In front of your daughter." James looked down at Lila, who peered up, wide-eyed and confused. "You didn't have to come," he said quietly. "But I needed to," she replied. "Not for publicity, not for guilt. For you, for her." She knelt beside Lila, holding out a small folded package. "This is for you. I don't expect forgiveness." Inside was the very same purple dress, the one Lila had clutched with a smile that lit up a dark year. Evelyn stood. "There's something else I need to do." And with that, she left not with security guards or flashbulbs, but with a plan. Burning behind her eyes, the press conference was packed. Cameras clicked like machine guns as Evelyn Marlowe stepped up to the podium outside her flagship store.